never thought I'd hear those words. You're not his daughter. My world shattered the moment my brother dropped that bombshell, and I realized everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. But that wasn't even the worst part. My name is Charlotte, and this is the story of how my family not only betrayed me, but tried to erase me from everything I held dear. What would you do if the people you loved most turned their backs on you? Keep watching to find out how I fought back and uncovered the truth. How far would you go for justice? I want to know what you think. Let me know where you are from and share your thoughts in the comments below. The rain fell heavily outside the old Lockwood estate, its rhythmic tapping against the windows like the beating of a heart. I stood there in the parlor, the familiar scent of the wooden floors and the once cozy space surrounding me, now a hollow shell. My father's funeral had just ended, the last of the guests had left, and the silence was deafening. It was the silence that came after all the words had been spoken, and all the goodbyes had been said. But now there was a new kind of tension in the air, something heavy, something I wasn't prepared for. I could still feel the ache of the day, the weight of my father's absence settling in my chest, along with the burden of what was about to come. The last time I stood in this room, everything was different. My father had been here, strong and present, and I had always known this house would be mine. It was my childhood home, the one place in the world that I had always felt safe. But now that safety was slipping away. Charlotte, my mother's voice broke through the thick fog of my thoughts. We need to talk. I turned to face her, my mother sitting in her usual spot by the fireplace. Her face was pale, eyes red from crying, but she still managed to look composed. My older brother Andrew stood by her side, arms folded across his chest, his expression a mixture of pity and annoyance. About what? I asked, trying to steady my voice, though I could feel the quiver of unease crawling up my spine. Andrew sighed, the sound thick with impatience. There's no easy way to say this, he started, glancing briefly at our mother before turning back to me. Dad, he didn't leave a will. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My stomach dropped and I felt a cold sweat break out along my forehead. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You heard me, he said, his tone hardening. There's no will, the estate, everything. It goes to Mom, and we're going to sell it. It's too much of a burden, Charlotte. It's time to let go. My heart raced. You can't be serious, I said, feeling a surge of anger flood my chest. This house is everything to me. Dad promised me it would always be mine. He said it would always be my home. I turned to my mother, my eyes pleading. Mom, please. You know how much this place meant to Dad. How can you just sell it? How can you let them do this? But she wouldn't look at me. Instead, her hands twisted the worn handkerchief in her lap. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Mom! I cried out, my voice cracking. Please, you can't just let them do this. Andrew stepped forward, his voice firm and emotionless. We've looked everywhere, Charlotte. There's nothing, no will. It's just the way it is. We have to be practical. You haven't lived here in years. This place is too expensive. It's time to move on. I shook my head, disbelieving. This isn't about money, Andrew. It's about family. This house has history. This is where I grew up. He stepped closer, his gaze hardening. But it's not about what you want. This is about what's best for everyone. Legally, you have no claim here. You never did. A tight knot formed in my throat as his words sank in. The reality of it was sinking in, but there was still something in me. Some small spark of hope that maybe it was all a mistake. Maybe Dad had meant to leave something, but that hope quickly began to fade. And if I do have a claim? I challenged myself, my voice trembling with the rush of emotion. What would you do then? Andrew's eyes narrowed. I'm sorry, Charlotte, but you don't have a claim. Then it came, like a blow to the chest. He spoke the words that would haunt me forever. Dad wasn't your biological father, he said, the words chilling in their bluntness. You're not a Lockwood by blood. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, the room spinning as my world fell apart. My chest tightened, and I could barely breathe. My father, the man who had raised me, who had been everything to me, wasn't really my father. What are you talking about? I gasped, my voice cracking. Margaret, my mother, stood up then, her face pale, her eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, then at Andrew, her hands trembling. "I never wanted you to find out like this, Charlotte," she said, her voice breaking. "But it's the truth. Richard, your father, wasn't your biological father, but he loved you like his own, and he raised you because he wanted to." The shock that followed was like nothing I had ever felt. The betrayal from both my mother and my brother cut through me like a blade. I felt my knees go weak, but I managed to stay standing, the room still spinning around me. "I'm still his daughter," I whispered, more to myself than to them. The words rang in my head, echoing in the emptiness of the room. He loved me. Blood doesn't make a family. He made me who I am. Andrew's face softened slightly, but his words were still sharp. "I know it's hard, but facts are facts. Legally, you have no right to the estate, not when you aren't really his daughter." I fought back the tears that threatened to fall, but my heart felt like it was breaking in two. How could they do this to me? How could they betray me like this, using a secret I had never known to push me aside? I stood there, shaking with emotion, the realization sinking in. I was alone. Even the people who I had trusted the most, the ones who were supposed to be my family, had turned against me. But at that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them take this from me. I wasn't going to let them take away the last piece of my father that remained. I turned and walked toward the door. The rain poured down harder outside, but I didn't care. I was done with them, done with the lies. I needed to be alone, to think, to find my own way. And as I stepped into the storm, I felt a strange sense of freedom take over. It wasn't the freedom of escape, though. It was the freedom of reclaiming everything that was mine. And nothing, no betrayal, no lie, was going to take that away from me. I walked toward the old oak tree at the edge of the yard, the memories flooding back with every step. The tree house, Dad's voice, the promises he'd made me. This house was my legacy, and I was going to fight for it, no matter what. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew that I had to find it. Something was waiting for me in that old treehouse, and I would stop at nothing to get it. The rain hadn't let up by the next morning, but the storm outside seemed nothing compared to the turmoil inside me. The night had been long, filled with a restless toss and turn, the sting of betrayal gnawing at my mind. I stood in front of the old house, looking at it as if it were a stranger. Everything had changed and nothing felt right. The Lockwood estate, which had been a symbol of family for me, was now a symbol of broken promises, of lies. I had been left to pick up the pieces of a shattered past, and that was exactly what I intended to do. The next morning, after only a few hours of sleep, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just let it go. I had to find the truth. I had to find out if my father had left anything for me. I refused to believe that he would just leave me with nothing. He was my father, blood or not, and the thought of losing everything that had been promised to me felt like a betrayal too deep to bear. I walked into my father's study, the place where he had spent most of his time, buried in paperwork and business deals. The room still smelled of tobacco and his favorite cologne, a scent that I had always associated with his presence. It was strange how even in his absence the room felt like a part of him still lingered. I sat down at his desk, my hands trembling as I moved papers aside. There had to be something hidden away. A note, a letter, anything that could prove what I knew in my heart. My father had never meant for me to be left out. His love for me was real, and it had to count for something. The desk was cluttered with old documents and financial statements, but there, in the corner of the drawer, I found something different. A small, leather-bound notebook. I had seen it before, sitting on his desk for years. It was filled with notes, ideas, and random thoughts. It was the kind of notebook a person uses to jot down the things that matter most. Unfinished thoughts, things they don't want to forget. I opened it, flipping through the pages until I found something that caught my eye. In his familiar handwriting, my father had written a short entry that read, "I have to make sure she knows. If anything happens to me, I need her to understand." The words hit me like a wave, a cold realization washing over me. My father had known. He had known that something might happen to him, that the family might turn against me, and he had left something for me. The will. It had to be here, somewhere. I read the entry again, tracing the ink with my finger. He had left me something, but where? I stood up quickly, my heart racing as I scanned the room, searching for any hint of where he might have hidden it. I wasn't going to let my family take everything from me. Not without a fight. I started looking through the room more thoroughly, checking drawers and old filing cabinets, but nothing stood out. As the minutes stretched into hours, my frustration grew. There had to be a way. I was sure of it. My father's love for me, for the house, was all around me, and it wasn't going to be erased by a legal document or a few words on a page. Then, as I rifled through a stack of old newspapers and magazines, something fell to the floor with a soft thud. I bent down to pick it up, and there it was, a yellowed envelope, its edges worn from age. I stared at it, my heart skipping a beat. The envelope was sealed with the familiar wax mark that my father always used when he sealed something important. I felt my breath catch in my throat as I opened it. Inside, there was a letter and a legal document. The letter was brief, written in my father's neat handwriting. Charlotte, I hope this letter finds you in better times. If you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. There is one thing you must know. You were always my daughter, and that will never change. This house was never meant to be sold, not as long as you are alive. I have ensured that it will always be yours, regardless of what happens. Tears welled in my eyes as I read the words again. I could almost hear his voice, calm and steady, as if he were standing right next to me. He had known. He had known this day would come. He had made sure that no matter what, I would have my home. And there it was, the legal document I had been searching for. It was signed, dated, and in perfect order. The will had been hidden in the place where my father knew I would find it. He had planned for this. He had known I would need it when everything else fell apart. I held the paper in my hands, the weight of it feeling both heavy and light at the same time. It was more than just a legal document. It was a testament to my father's love, his belief in me. It was proof that everything I had been told was a lie. I wasn't just his adopted daughter. I was his daughter in every sense of the word. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking in the depth of what I had just uncovered. My father had fought for me, even after his death. He had ensured that this house, this legacy, would be mine. And now it was time to take it back. But I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't let my family win. My mother, my brother, they thought they had won, but they hadn't. They had underestimated me, and now they would pay the price. I folded the papers and placed them in my bag. It was time to face them. Time to show them the truth. As I walked out of the study, the weight of the document in my bag, I knew that this was only the beginning. The battle for Lockwood House wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The sound of rain was relentless, tapping against the window as I sat in the living room of the Lockwood house. The once warm and comforting place now felt cold, distant, just like the family who had betrayed me. I held the envelope tightly in my hand, the will sealed within, my father's words imprinted on my mind. This house will always be yours, regardless of what happens. But the reality of what I had to do next weighed heavily on me. I had to face my mother. I had to confront Andrew. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about proving that I belonged here, that I had every right to this life, to this legacy. They had tried to erase me, but I was going to make them see who I truly was. I stood up, walking slowly across the familiar yet alien space. The dark wood of the furniture, the elegant curtains, the family portraits on the walls. It all felt like a distant memory, one I had to reclaim. The pain of betrayal was sharp, but I pushed it aside. It was time for the truth to be heard. The doorbell rang, and my heart skipped a beat. I knew who it was. My mother and brother had arrived. The confrontation I had been dreading was finally here. I had to do this, for myself and for my father's memory. I opened the door to find my mother standing there, her face pale and tear-streaked. Andrew stood beside her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, we just stared at each other. My mother looked at me with a mixture of guilt and reluctance, as if she didn't want to face the truth. Andrew's eyes were hard, his jaw clenched tight. I could feel the tension between us, thick in the air. They knew why I had called them here. They knew what was coming. "Charlotte," my mother whispered, her voice faltering. "You shouldn't have come back. We thought this would be easier for you. For all of us." I shook my head, my throat tight. "You thought this would be easier," I I repeated, my voice trembling. You thought I would just accept what you did to me, to my father's legacy? This is my home, and I will not let you take it from me. Andrew stepped forward, his face hardening. We've already told you, Charlotte. Dad made his decision, and it's final. There's nothing left to fight for. I took a step back, the envelope in my hand trembling slightly. That's where you're wrong, I said firmly. You never gave me a chance. You lied to me. You kept the truth from me for all these years. But I'm done letting you decide what I deserve. My mother's face contorted with anguish. Charlotte, please, she started, but I raised my hand to stop her. No, Mom. No more lies. No more pretending. You want to sell this house, but it was never yours to sell. My father made sure of that. Andrew sneered. You're just holding on to a dream, Charlotte. It's a house. Nothing more. What do you really want from us? You've always been the outsider. I flinched at his words, but I didn't let the hurt show. Instead, I stood tall, clutching the envelope tightly. You're right. I've always been the outsider. But no more. You don't get to define me. I know what my father wanted, and I know what's mine. Andrew took a step toward me, his face twisted in anger. You don't understand. This isn't about some house. It's about family, about blood. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't back down. It's about respect, about the truth. I am your sister, Andrew. I was raised by the man you called Dad. His love for me was real. His legacy, this house, is mine, and I will not let you take it from me. The room was thick with silence as I stood there, holding my ground. My mother was trembling, and for the first time Andrew seemed unsure. His anger faltered, replaced by something I couldn't quite place. Regret, maybe? He didn't say anything, but his eyes darted to my mother, and then to the will I held in my hand. I held up the envelope. This, I said, my voice steady, is proof. Proof that I'm not just a daughter by name. I'm a daughter in every way that matters, and you're going to have to accept that. My mother burst into tears. I never wanted to hurt you, Charlotte, she sobbed. But I didn't know how else to protect you. I didn't want you to feel left out. I shook my head, trying to hold back my own tears. You've already hurt me, Mom, but I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for my father's house, and for you to see me as I am, not as the person you wanted me to be. Andrew looked away, his face a mask of confusion and guilt. You're right, he muttered, barely audible. I should have told you the truth. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. It's too late for apologies, I said quietly, but it's not too late to make this right. I turned to face the house, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The family I once knew was slipping away, and I had no idea what would come next. But one thing was certain. I was not going to let them take this from me. I would fight, no matter what it took. As I walked away from them, the weight of the will in my pocket, I knew the real battle was just beginning, and I wasn't going to lose. The weight of the envelope was still with me, pressing against my side as I walked into the small, unassuming law office. The thick scent of coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the faint rustle of papers and the occasional sound of a phone ringing. The office felt colder than it had before, like the quiet before a storm. My mind was reeling from the confrontation at the house, but now, the next step was clear. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. I wasn't naive. I knew it wouldn't be easy. My family had power, connections, and influence. But what they didn't have was the truth. I had my father's will. I had my father's words. That was my weapon, and it was more than enough to go up against them. The door to the office opened, and a man in his early 40s looked up from behind his desk. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his glasses rested low on his nose, giving him a serious yet approachable air. He rose to his feet when I walked in, extending his hand in a professional, calm gesture. You must be Ms. Lockwood, he said, his voice steady but warm. I'm attorney Brian Mallory. How can I help you? I nodded, shaking his hand firmly, my grip a bit too tight. I hadn't realized how much tension I was carrying until I felt it course through my body. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I need your help, I said, my voice steady but urgent. My family's trying to sell my father's house. They've excluded me from his will, and I need to fight for my inheritance. Attorney Mallory gestured for me to take a seat. I lowered myself into the chair opposite him, clutching the envelope in my lap. He studied me for a moment, his brow furrowing slightly as he listened. I assume you've already spoken to them about this? He asked, his voice calm but probing. I nodded. Yes, I confronted them, but they are determined. They say I have no claim. They told me my father wasn't even my biological father. But he raised me. He loved me. And he made sure I would inherit this house. I have proof. His will. I just need help proving it. Attorney Mallory leaned back in his chair, taking a slow breath. His hands folded in front of him, his fingers tapping lightly on the desk. I see. So, the issue is not just about the house, but the fact that they're claiming you're not legally entitled to it. I nodded again, my heart thudding in my chest. Exactly. But I know my father's intentions. He would have never excluded me. I don't care about the money. I care about the principle. This house was supposed to be mine. Mallory nodded, his expression thoughtful. And you're saying there's a will that supports your claim? I handed him the envelope, watching as he carefully unfolded the papers inside. The legal document, signed by my father years ago, was now in his hands. Mallory's eyes flicked over the document as he read through it quickly, his brow furrowing as he turned the page. After a long moment, he looked up at me. This is a solid case, he said, his voice measured. The will is clear. Your father left you the house, and it seems he was aware of the family dynamics. He anticipated the situation you're facing now. I exhaled, a slight sense of relief washing over me. For a moment, it felt as though the weight had been lifted, but I knew the hardest part was still to come. What's the next step? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mallory took a deep breath, his eyes steady as he met mine. We'll need to file a claim in court. The first step is to establish that the will is valid, and that it supersedes any other claims made by your family. It won't be easy, but the evidence is on your side. Your father made his wishes clear. I nodded again, my heart a mix of determination and fear. How long will this take? I asked, bracing myself for the answer. It could take several months, Mallory said, his tone grim. The courts move slowly, especially in cases involving family disputes. Your family will likely fight this, and they'll have resources at their disposal, but we'll prepare for that. We'll build our case step by step. The gravity of the situation settled over me. I knew this wasn't going to be a simple fight. It would drag on, possibly for months, and my family, my own flesh and blood, would do everything in their power to try and take the house from me. But I couldn't back down. Not now. We're ready, I said firmly, meeting his gaze. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Mallory gave me a small, understanding nod. Good, I'll start by drafting the necessary paperwork. We'll need to gather all the evidence we can, including statements from any witnesses who were present when your father made these decisions. We'll also need to prepare for a possible legal battle with your family. I stood up, determination filling my chest. Let's do this. Attorney Mallory stood as well, offering his hand once again. You've got this, Ms. Lockwood. We'll get this sorted out. I shook his hand firmly, my heart beating faster now. There was a long road ahead, but I was no longer alone. I had a team, and I had the truth on my side. As I left the office, the sound of the rain outside seemed to mirror the turmoil within me, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was no longer just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my dignity, my father's memory, and my right to belong. Walking out of that office, the weight of the battle ahead felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The fight for what was mine had just begun, and I wasn't about to lose. The phone call came when I least expected it. The heavy weight of legal paperwork and mounting pressure from my family had made me feel like I was losing the battle. The courtroom loomed closer, and the burden was beginning to take its toll. But then, one unexpected call changed everything. Charlotte, this is Lisa. We need to talk, the voice on the other end said. Lisa. I hadn't spoken to her in years. She was my father's old lawyer and had been a close family friend. After his passing, she'd largely faded from my life. But now, her voice seemed to carry a new tone, one of urgency and sincerity. I felt a flicker of hope that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in weeks. Lisa, what's going on? I asked, my voice hoarse. I've been following the developments in your case. I know things are tough right now, but I believe your father left you more than just a house. There are documents, records that could change everything. But we need to meet, and we need to move quickly. Her words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I could barely process the information, but one thing was clear. Lisa was offering me something invaluable, something I didn't even know I had. "Where?" I asked, my voice sharp with anticipation. "Meet me at the old office. You remember it?" she asked, referring to a small, tucked-away building near the edge of town where my father had run his private legal affairs. "I'll be there," I said, my heart racing as I quickly ended the call. I didn't waste a second. I gathered the files I had on hand, the will, the letter, the legal documents, and drove straight to the office. The rain was coming down in sheets as I navigated through the slippery roads, my mind racing with questions. What had Lisa found? What did she know that could change the course of this fight? When I arrived at the office, Lisa was already waiting for me. She was standing outside the building, looking exactly as I remembered. Her short, dark hair, her professional but warm demeanor. The moment she saw me, she gave a tight nod, as though acknowledging both my arrival and the seriousness of the moment. "Let's go inside," she said, motioning toward the door. "I have something to show you." We entered the small, dimly lit office. Lisa led me to a table in the back where several thick folders were neatly stacked. She handed me one of the folders, and I could see it was filled with documents. My hands trembled as I opened it, the paper crinkling under my fingertips. "These are your father's private legal records. There are a lot of things in here that your family doesn't know about, Charlotte, and things they've been trying to hide from you." I stared down at the papers, my mind whirling as I took in the information. There, in black and white, were the details of my father's decision-making process regarding his estate. I could see his handwritten notes, his instructions, and the clear intentions he had left for me. The will that had been hidden, the decisions he made, all of it was here. I looked up at Lisa, unable to find the words to express what I was feeling. She gave me a reassuring look, one that seemed to understand everything I had been through in the past few months. "He left you more than just the house, Charlotte. He left you his legacy, and he anticipated what your family would do when he was gone. This will, these records, they're the proof you need. They show that he always intended for you to be the one in charge. Not Andrew, not Margaret." Tears blurred my vision as I took the papers from her, my breath catching in my throat. It was more than I could have hoped for, more than I had imagined. I was holding my father's wishes in my hands, his final statement to the world. And it was a declaration that I was not just his daughter, but his chosen heir. "I don't know how to thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You've just given me the one thing I needed to fight for this. To fight for him." Lisa gave a small, almost wistful smile. "You don't need to thank me, Charlotte. Your father made sure you were protected. He knew the risks, and he made sure you would have the truth on your side. Now it's time to use it." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of resolve settle over me. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about my father's trust, his love, and the fight for justice. The next morning, I took the records to my lawyer, Mallory, and we began preparing for the next phase of the legal battle. My family had underestimated me, and now, with this new evidence, I knew I had a chance to finally claim what was mine. But the real challenge was just beginning. The first part of the battle was to expose the truth, to show my family that I was more than just a bystander in this fight. I had been raised to believe in justice, in fairness, and I was going to make sure my father's legacy was honored, no matter the cost. It wasn't going to be easy. It would be a long and grueling process. But I was no longer afraid of what might come. The truth was on my side, and I wasn't going to stop until I had claimed what was rightfully mine. I stood there, holding my father's legacy in my hands, knowing that this was the turning point. The next steps would either make or break me. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let go of the fight now. The courtroom was quiet as the judge's words echoed through the room. I could hardly breathe, but the weight that had been on my shoulders for so long was starting to lift. "Given the evidence provided," the judge said, "and the will that has been presented by Charlotte Lockwood, I hereby declare that Lockwood House is rightfully hers. The decision is final." For a moment, everything went still. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt the rush of adrenaline and relief course through my veins. I had done it. The house, the one that held all my memories, was finally mine again. I had fought for it, against my own family, against the world, and I had won. As I stood there in the courtroom, I glanced over at my lawyer, Mallory, who gave me a small, approving nod. There was no greater feeling than this, the feeling of knowing that justice had been done, that the truth had prevailed. But as much as I had won today, I knew this wasn't the end of the battle. The legal fight had been long and exhausting, but there was still one final confrontation waiting for me. I had to face my family, to stand up to the people who had betrayed me, to those who had tried to take everything from me. The drive home was a blur. My mind was racing as I thought about the next step. What would I say to them? How would I confront the people who had once been my family? When I pulled into the driveway of Lockwood House, it was like a strange mix of emotions overtook me. This was it, the place where I had spent so many years of my childhood. The place I had lost and then fought so hard to reclaim. As I stepped inside the front door, the familiar scent of old wood and fresh rain hit me. Everything was exactly as it had been when I left, except now, it felt like I had come back home, truly home, in a way I never had before. I walked through the halls slowly, soaking in the quiet. There were no more legal threats hanging over me. There was no more fear. I had done it. The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was just after dinner, and the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Andrew standing there, his face a mix of confusion and anger. "Charlotte," he said coldly, "we need to talk." I didn't let him in. "What is there left to say, Andrew?" My voice was firm, steady. I had been through too much to show weakness now. His eyes narrowed. "You don't understand," he said, stepping forward. But I stood my ground. "Don't I?" I replied, the words coming out of my mouth sharper than I intended. "You never thought I'd get this far, did you? You thought you could take everything from me. The house, my legacy, my right to call this home. But I'm not you. I fought for this, and I won. This is my home, and nothing you say is going to change that." Andrew shifted uncomfortably, clearly taken aback by the fire in my voice. "This isn't what Dad would have wanted," he said quietly, almost as if he was trying to convince himself as much as me. "No," I said, shaking my head. "This is exactly what he would have wanted. He loved me, Andrew. He raised me as his own. He knew what was coming, and he made sure I'd have the truth on my side when it mattered most. I may not be his by blood, but I was always his daughter in every way that mattered. You can't take that away from me." Andrew looked at the floor, avoiding my gaze. I could see the shame in his posture, the realization that there was nothing more to say. My mother, Margaret, stepped into the room just then, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands trembling. "Charlotte," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have known better. I should have believed you." I looked at her, and for a moment, I saw the guilt that lingered in her eyes. She had been so consumed by fear of losing the house, so wrapped up in her own self-interest, that she hadn't realized how far she'd gone in hurting me. "I know, Mom," I said softly. "But it's over now. This house is mine. It was always meant to be mine." Margaret nodded slowly, as if the weight of the situation was finally sinking in. She opened her mouth to say something more, but the words caught in her throat. I turned to Andrew, who still stood there, silent. "I'm done," I said. "You tried to take everything from me. But you won't. This is mine, and I'm not going to let anyone take it away from me." For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the faint creak of the floorboards beneath our feet. And then, with one final look at my family, I said, "I think it's time for you to leave." The door closed behind them, and the silence that filled the house felt like peace. The storm of betrayal and loss had finally passed, and I was standing on the other side, stronger than I had ever been before. As I stood in the center of the house, I thought about all the years I had spent longing for this place, for the memories of my father, and for the future I had once feared I'd never have. The journey had been long and painful, but it had also made me who I was today. Someone who would never back down, no matter the odds. Looking around, I realized something important. This house wasn't just a building. It wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was a symbol of everything I had fought for, everything I had lost, and everything I had gained. In the end, it wasn't just about the house. It was about finding my place in the world, standing firm in my truth, and reclaiming the part of me that had always been there but had been hidden for so long. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And as I walked through the familiar halls of Lockwood House, I knew that, for the first time in my life, I was finally home. I stood there, watching the last remnants of my family leave, feeling the weight of everything finally lifting. But as the door shut behind me, I realized one thing. The fight was over. I had won. And this was only the beginning. As I stood in the quiet of the house that had once been my father's, a sense of peace finally settled over me. The road had been long, filled with pain and loss, but in the end, I had reclaimed not just a house, but my place in the family and life. The memories of my father's love for this home, and the strength I found within myself to defend it, filled me with gratitude. The betrayal may have hurt, but it also taught me something valuable. No matter what happens, our true worth is never defined by others, but by how we choose to stand up for ourselves. Family is more than just blood. It's about the love and understanding we give each other. Sometimes, the most painful experiences teach us the greatest lessons about strength, perseverance, and forgiveness. Life may not always go the way we expect, but with determination and love, we can create our own path. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to share your experiences and subscribe for more stories.